Hampshire Unscripted with your host, Ray Dudley.
Perfect.
There we go.
How are you?
I'm good. But the question is, how are you? Sore throats. My hat's off to you. I don't like them.
Yeah, me either. It just kind of came on. I had no idea it was happening. I woke up one day and I'm like, oh my, it hurts. And
just a little welcome to the season.
Yeah, I guess. And it was gone after like 3 or 4 days.
Good.
I had no other symptoms.
Yeah, no other symptoms. Good.
Nope. I was very happy. Thank you for doing this, by the way.
No, what really cinched it is when you said that you'd show it to Lacey and Waylon before airing it. And I thought, okay, between the three of them, they're not going to let me say anything stupid.
We're going to try.
You're going to try.
Yeah, we're going to do our best, I'll tell you.
I'll do mine too.
Well, so
I don't know what I remember.
That's why, yeah, I'm glad we're doing this now. So
yeah.
Do you go by Peggy Rae? I don't want to insult you. Okay.
Yes. Thank you.
So, Peggy Rae, why don't we start out with some background? Can you give me a little bit of information about who you are? And I mean, you don't have to get into many specifics, but what you do and maybe your relationship to theater.
Sure. First of all, I'm an old person with an old relationship. 7+ decades of professional academic theater and acting and 22 different schools. Probably the biggest things include 30 years with the Kennedy Center American College Theater Festival. I taught at UNH as director of theater education there. And I've been at Keene State for 20 years.
Do you, besides teaching, do you actually perform?
Yes. More directing these days, though, just because it's getting harder to remember all those lines.
I'm with you. Oh, my God.
So it's a lot easier to tell people where to go.
You're the sympathizer here. Yeah. What was your relationship to the show before you went to it?
Pretty much none. I had a nice lunch with Lacey that we kind of got caught up, and he talked about White Rabbit and Red Rabbit. Can't forget the red one. Yes. And he told me what was allowable. What he could say about it without telling me the story. The one thing that he mentioned is that the playwright was from Syria. Is that right? Am I remembering that correctly? From Syria?
Iranian, Iraq?
Iranian, Iraq. Is it in the? I brought my program here.
Oh, your cheat sheet.
My cheat sheet. Yes, exactly. I don't even know if it says this on there. Anyway, I won't take up that time.
That's
anyway,
okay.
It made me, what we then got into the conversation is the number of non-American students that I've had the privilege of working with, and how that perspective is so valuable. We tend to get little myopic when we are constantly in our own culture.
Yeah.
And so I understood that this was a piece that was not written in the US, was not a US playwright, and that it had many lives before it was coming to Concord, New Hampshire. Many European lives and New York lives, etc. And I hadn't really heard about it. So it was very intriguing because this is my career. This is my vocation, my avocation, and I try to stay on top of what's going on in theater. My daughter is a New York actor. She's in a show at the Manhattan Theater Club right now. She's been on Broadway a number of times. She's had some national tours. So we're kind of a theater family,
Mm-hmm.
and this was something new. I didn't know anything at all about it, and it intrigued me.
Did you research
Lacey
it?
told me about it.
Did you research it before you went to it?
I didn't, primarily because Lacey had said that people weren't supposed to know anything about it.
Mm.
And I thought, well, I fit that bill. I know nothing.
So what I'd like to do is maybe walk through the progression from the first performance through the fourth. I believe you saw 4, right?
I did, yes.
Okay.
And I wish I had seen them all.
Oh, okay. We'll get to that. That's a very interesting
Okay.
perspective. When you were going to this particular, the first production, with your background, what were you expecting, hoping for? Maybe what were you trying to maybe glean from it, or did you have no expectations at all?
Honestly, the first one that I went to, I had I gave myself no expectations. I said, let's go see, this is kind of a crazy idea, and let's go see what happens, which is always a good thing for theater. You take the risk.
Yeah.
The National Theater Institute uses that as their phrase, their logo. It says, take the risk, fail, risk again. And it's what I try to encourage my students to do, which is not easy to do. So all of these actors that Waylon and Lacey got together were essentially stepping off of the diving board into the deep end without a safety net.
Yeah.
And I thought that was an intriguing concept. And I just wanted to see what happened. What really captured me within the first, 15 minutes or so, the playwright made the statement, this is an experiment. And that opened everything up for me. As soon as he made that comment, I believed that there were no expectations on my part, that I didn't know the genre, I didn't know the style, I didn't know the tone. It could have been a political piece, it could have been a comedy or a social political piece, it could have been about gender or you name it. Yeah. Take a list of headlines off of the New York Times and pick a topic. So when he said it was an experiment, I said, okay, good. Just let it, it's a little like going to a dance concert. You just kind of let it wash over you. And it proceeded to do that. So much so that by the end, I wasn't completely sure what I'd seen, and I was glad that I was coming back a second time. Text analysis and rehearsal time are 2 of my favorite things about working in the theater. I love the rehearsal process. I love the initial research process of text analysis.
And here you go to a show which has neither.
Exactly. That's right. And no one has any expectation. The one expectation that I found pretty much consistent through the 4 shows that I was lucky enough to see is that the audience, a certain percentage of the audience had a relationship with the actor. Mm. Maybe they were family, maybe they were neighbors, maybe they were co-theater workers, whatever, but it felt as if they came with the idea of supporting the actor, whatever was going to happen. And that was interesting to me because of the way that it impacted the actors. Each of the 4 pieces that I saw had different ways of beginning. partially because of that initial relationship that nobody anticipated. But of course, it impacts the actor.
Yeah.
Some audiences laughed right away and were clearly wanting to support the actor. And for some actors, it seemed as if that made them a little bit more uncomfortable. And for others, it kind of welcomed them to the situation. So that it really was an experiment on many levels. And what my first two, I had chosen in advance. I knew I wanted to see it twice. One of my choices, I saw the first two, Steve and Alex, and I knew both of them, and so I like the idea of a male and a female. I just thought it would be interesting to see whether that was going to have any impact, whether gender was going to have an influence, which in retrospect, I would say it didn't.
Okay.
So those are the things that I went into it with,
Okay.
and explored with them.
When you went to the first performance, before you actually entered the theater, did you know you were going to go see it a second time?
Yes.
You did.
I got my 2 tickets right up front. Yeah.
Okay. And was it because it was a male and a female, or just because you wanted to see the show back to back?
It worked in terms of my schedule, but I knew both Steve and Alex, and so that was just kind of like the comments that I made about the audience, I wanted to be supportive of them.
Mm-hmm.
I also didn't want to risk word of mouth getting out. I wanted to be my own audience member and make my own choices.
Good.
I'm kind of independent that way.
When you were sitting in the audience prior to the show beginning, what was the atmosphere like in the building? You mentioned, which I kind of known from speaking with some of the other actors, that there were people there supporting them. But
yes.
Was there what was the feeling going on in the building?
It was pretty typical, I would say, in that people were chatting and talking, and the set is so minimal that it really didn't give anything away. Mm-hmm. There were no given circumstances that were obvious from the set, so that people couldn't be sitting there talking about the atmosphere. There was some pre-music, some sound, some pre-show sound, but it was very, very underscored, and basically kind of an urban sound. So it could have been anywhere and didn't necessarily put the audience into a particular time or place, in my opinion, and just let us all communicate together. Mm-hmm. And there were a number of people that knew each other. And so as people came in, it was just very friendly and welcoming.
Okay. When you're in the audience, you have a very different perspective since you're an actor, a director, or you have all this background, which is very different than maybe just a parent being there, or just a friend showing up. So when you sit and you're watching, before any actor comes out, lights are up, music's playing, what are you observing? Are you in particular wondering about the set as someone in the industry, quote unquote? Are you looking at the set yourself and seeing all of the tiny things that are out there that may or may not get used? I mean, I haven't seen it, so I don't know what's out there. So what's going through your head as you scan the environment?
To be completely honest, I worked with the Kennedy Center for so many years and went to as many as 4, 5, 6 different shows throughout New England and gave responses to the actors and the director and the crew, etc. And then we made recommendations as to whether or not they were going to go to the festival, etc. So that I was often taking notes, making very specific notes about actor choices, director choices, set choices, sound choices, all of that. And for me, it's just a real pleasure to go to a show empty-handed. And so I've learned to appreciate just being an audience member, not predetermined. It's because I'm an old person, because I've been around the block more than once. It's not often that I see brand new plays, and I really like to embrace that opportunity when it comes. And this was definitely that opportunity. It was brand new. I didn't know anything about it, and no one was telling me anything about it. Yeah. So for me, the opportunity to just sit there and say, "What have you got? I'm here to receive what you're going to give me," and not have any predetermined thoughts. And the set was so minimal that it didn't give anything away.
So, because you knew Steve and Alex, did you have were you nervous for them at all before they
No.
Okay.
No. Whatever the premise was, whatever. So I met them halfway. They were coming to me with whatever, I was going to them with whatever. And it was truly a collaborative process, as theater is when it's in its best dressed outfits.
So the actors handed their envelope as they begin to walk on stage, and now they appear. Steve, I was told, was probably the oldest performer of the 9. That
they were all younger than I am, so I don't know.
I was wondering if perhaps you felt that, having seen 4 shows, if you felt that his age was an advantage or perhaps a disadvantage as an actor receiving a script they have never seen before and now have to unwrap it and be creative on the spot.
I've asked myself that after the shows. I have an hour and 15-minute drive back away from Concord. So after each show and going to the next show, etc., I had lots of time to think to myself what I had been through, what I'd seen. And I asked myself that same question, particularly after I'd seen all 4 of them. And I tried to unravel for myself what some of the differentiations were, and if there were cause effects that I could pinpoint. And to be honest, I think every single person on that stage did their work their way, with no preamble and no expectation. The pace was different for each person. The discoveries were different for each person. The beat shifts, being able to find, there are places in the script that really change in terms of the tone. I think I can say that without
that's fine.
Getting it. Okay, so that there were times when some actors were caught off guard and allowed themselves to truthfully experience that experiment. Brief example, I think I can say this. One actor had to put the script down and turn away and just take a breath and regroup, and then move forward with this unexpected path
Can I
that had
stop
just
you there
been
for a
presented?
second? Yeah.
I'm sorry, sure.
Yeah, because this intrigues me. Was this particular moment in one of the latter episodes?
No, it was in an early one.
Hmm. Were you?
And what was interesting about it to me is that particular person had a significant number of people in the audience who were really being supportive, whether it was through laughing or clapping or and so there was a lighthearted, not a party atmosphere, but a joyful atmosphere.
Mhm.
And then when this happened, things came to a screeching halt. Everything stopped for that moment as the actor had to make that very personal and large adjustment. And I found that incredibly compelling and truthful, which is so engaging to see an actor experience something like that.
Did that come out of nowhere for you? Did you? Because
Yeah.
I'm going to guess it was not the first performance you saw. So could you anticipate it was coming up, and or was it like one of those, oh, they're reacting differently to something that?
Yeah, that's exactly what it was. Because this person was in a different world than the previous person, and so I didn't necessarily. I mean, there were parts about the story. Obviously, once I'd seen it, I knew what was going to happen, but I didn't necessarily know when it was going to happen. I hadn't studied the script. I hadn't analyzed it. I didn't do any beat shifts of my own. So I just was watching it take place. And when this happened to another actor, or to a different actor, I just sat back and said, whoa, because I was appreciating what the actor was discovering.
Mm-hmm.
I was appreciating what the audience was seeing, because it was so immediate. And we talk about moment to moment and immediate presence. We talk about film being in the past, but theater is always in the present tense.
Yeah.
And so this was a very good moment of truth that we were all sharing, and it was compelling to watch and wonder where it was going to go next, because this actor was taking it in a different place. And indeed, the arc of the piece did have a little bit of a roller coaster after that, because there was a sincerity to that actor applied to the script after that moment of discovery. I don't know if any of this makes sense, but
it makes a lot of sense to me. As an actor, I really eat this up.
You really would have liked it. I'm sorry you didn't get to see it.
That's okay. Maybe I'll get there yet. When you saw Steve's performance, I want to just sit on that for a minute, because
Sure.
It was the first time you had seen the play. So
right.
You had no idea what you were about to watch or experience. So how were you? I don't know how to frame this. What lens were you looking through? Were you watching him as an actor creating, or were you watching him just kind of sitting back, observing what was taking place and the interaction with the audience? Because when I spoke with some of the other actors, one of the things that I had mentioned was a lot of people who aren't performers don't understand what's taking place, as that actor is looking literally at a script for the first time, having to read a word, interpret it, and how he thinks it's fitting in a line that fits in a paragraph he hasn't seen yet, and try to be creative in front of an audience live.
Right.
So how are you observing that? And what was you said it took 15 minutes and you were comfortable. with what was going on.
Yeah, about that.
So what were you looking at and experiencing in those moments?
I don't, you ask good questions that I haven't thought about. So I don't have.
I'm hungry, Peggy Rae. I'm trying to.
I suppose, since all of this is in retrospect, it's the closest I could probably come to giving you any kind of rational response would be similar to a first table read of a show, when except that people then they know their characters, they know the play, they've had that chance. So that is just throwing a pebble in the stream. But in terms of my personal lens, I think that comes as close as anything, is that I was watching this as a director, wondering where these actors are going to go, particularly after the first one, because I knew that there were going to be pitfalls. You could drive off the edge of the curb. You could, all kinds of things. And so I was interested in really watching where they were going to go rather than why they were going to go. And so it was, I suppose I was watching more from a directorial position of, oh, look at the choice this person made compared to what I saw the last time. Or even things like pace that I mentioned before. That was huge in terms of individual actor choice. Some of them used a rapid pace, and so they didn't necessarily have those same moments of discovery. In fact, they may have skipped over some things in retrospect. There might have been a couple of items that were not fully fleshed out, etc., or forgotten or neglected. Anytime you've got the script in front of you, your eye can skip ahead and miss a line or miss a few words, etc.
Right.
And you
with the adrenaline going, how can you not?
Absolutely. Yeah. So, so I would say that mostly I was looking at it from a directorial position, and that also includes text analysis, asking myself what it was that the actor was seeing and thinking and trying to do. Acting is always, we always have to remind ourselves, acting is a verb. What do they do? What's their intention? And those things were all unique to each of these brave actors. And I my hat's off to all of them, because they were all individualized, they were all unique, and they were all brave, and were stepping off that. I said the diving board earlier, the platform. I think it might have been more like being on a pirate ship and having to, walk the plank, and the alligators are down underneath, etc. So each of them should be congratulated for this process, because it's unique.
What was your experience during the first one? Were there moments that caught you off guard? Were there moments that you were like, oh, what a wonderful moment, I can treasure that? Or as you were going along on the ride, what was happening for you?
I guess first I would say Steve was providing a very intelligent reading. He provided nuance. He provided enough pause for some discoveries for himself, and to allow us to catch up with him. And that allows the audience to trust what is happening. And so you can just kind of let whatever happens go. And the intelligent reading that he gave had a nice blend of, not to get too classically esoteric, but enough blend of pathos and bathos, enough attention to detail to allow us to, I don't know that I ever had an aha moment, but I know that I had a couple of deep inhalation moments where I didn't necessarily want to hear what I just heard. And it caused me just a moment's pause and hesitation. And Steve allowed me that. And so I kept moving into the script with him, which is always what you want your audience to do, to join you in that world. So he was inviting me along, giving me permission to discover it with him.
Yeah. So Steve set the bar more or less for you.
Yes.
What happened with the other three? Did the bar move? Was the bar irrelevant because of the unique abilities of everybody else? In other words, were there 4 different bars by the end of this thing?
Yes. Yeah, I think that's a fair way to say it, because it's not a matter of right and wrong. Mm-hmm. It's a matter, even in watching Robert De Niro in one of his roles, you're not sitting there thinking, oh, that's a good choice. No, that's a bad choice. You're assessing good choices, better choices, and then best choices, which is why we like rehearsal. Yeah. And that's probably the biggest element for me is, had I been one of those actors, I would have been very frustrated by not being able to rehearse this, because you know that by the 15th, 18th, 22nd time, you're going to say it differently. You're going to discover things that are different. It's going to have a totally different intention, and themes are going to jump out that you never considered the first time. So it's, in some ways, the experiment is incredibly frustrating. I would think.
I would think too. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And where the actors were at that moment is knee deep into this experiment, and you can't go back and say, "Wait a minute, let me take another take on that."
Right.
You can't do over. No do overs. So it really, what I guess I saw in subsequent choices is the difference between the actors who chose to establish a momentum that stayed pretty consistent versus those actors who stumbled across a discovery, allowed themselves to actually acknowledge what was happening, mm-hmm. gave themselves that moment, as I mentioned before, of needing to put the script down, needing to turn away, needing to process, so that we're seeing part of the rehearsal process right in that moment. And I love that, because it's inviting me to join that process.
That discovery process, do you think it was aided at all by, and maybe it's all of these, male or female, years of acting experience, social, physical, emotional, financial, societal status, all of those things? What could you see those things coming in and being incorporated as these performers were trying not in vain, but trying to make something out of this as best they could?
I think I could, but I don't know how accurate that statement is. It's a knee-jerk response, mm-hmm. To your question. I once once, more than once. I used to teach a seminar of 24 of the great acting teachers of the 20th century. And it covered everyone from Stanislavski and Meyerhold to Brecht through up to contemporary Stella Adler, Uta Hagen, you name it. And we studied that person's style as an acting teacher. And then they had to present that style as if they were the acting teacher and they were doing a class. They were presenting the class to their peers. And then they had to direct students in a scene using that style. So I consider it an advantage, a vantage point that is an advantage of being able to see, and you see the same thing in auditions. You know, an actor comes in for audition, and you get a sense of this actor's training. Is this actor's training primarily vocal? Is this actor's training primarily improvisational, primarily classical, primarily physical? You know, what's their base? That's what you're seeing when you're choosing actors, and when you're bringing people back for callbacks. Do you want them all to have a similar style, or do you want different styles? How is that all going to gel? So those are some of the choices that you're confronted with, and I think, if I'm being truthful to my memory, or my memory is being truthful to me, I was aware of those kinds of distinctions. So not necessarily that one person was older or had more experience, or they had different experiences from, is the way that I would categorize it. That I would say that some of them were probably more comfortable with improv. And I think that some of them were more prone to not stage fright, but a little bit of stage anxiety. Mm-hmm. And so those are probably differentiations that have to do with experience and possible maturity on the stage. But I couldn't necessarily pinpoint, oh, this person was looking at it from this point of view, and this person had this. So I will admit, I had my favorites out of the four, but it wasn't necessarily based on individual craft choices. It wasn't necessarily, like I said before, there are good choices, better choices, and then there are those best choices. But it's not a matter of good and bad.
What made one the best for you? You don't have to tell me which one it was, but what brought that feeling out in you that, oh, this was just very well done? I'm really partial to voice work. I studied with 7 different voice teachers from the UK, and I love vocal nuance. Not that you could tell based on what I'm giving you right now, but we Americans have 2, maybe 3, really unfortunate vocal habits. And one of them is that we have a falling inflection pattern, and we throw away the ends of our sentences. A lot of that is simple support, but it's also a matter of vocal expressiveness and oral interpretation, etc. The other thing is range. The average American has at most 12 notes in their range,
And of those 12 notes, we tend to use the bottom 4, which is why we laugh at shows like Ferris Bueller's Day Off, when the teacher is calling the attendance, says, Bueller, Bueller, Bueller. Every student recognizes that flatlined, monotone lecture voice that I'm using a lot of myself. So I was most excited when an actor allowed himself or herself to explore vocal expressiveness. And that includes taking a breath. That includes, I was a disc jockey for 6 years. And you
Is there anything you haven't done? Vocal lessons, disc jockey, Kennedy Center.
Very little physics. Very little physics.
All right.
Yeah. But we used to talk about rip and read. I mean, that's how we got the news. You go to the AP and you rip it, and then you got a minute, 60 seconds to choose which ones, and then you're reading them cold, etc. So that you have to learn where to take those breaths. You have to learn syntax, this sentence structure. And interestingly enough, this playwright acknowledges that this is the first play he's ever written in English. And so his syntax was not always easy to follow.
Wow.
Yeah, it was, so there were little nuances like that I found really interesting, and that I probably picked up on because I was able to watch it 4 times. But I don't know that everybody was, able to pick it up like that. Audience members or actors, for that matter, either, because they're just doing it once.
Yeah. So
voice interpretations are always big for me. Physical choices were huge. Some people walked around the whole. The hat box is in thrust, mm-hmm. So it's a 3/4 audience, around 3/4, and some of the actors made sure that they connected to all 3 sides and walked around a lot. And so there was movement, energy. We got to see how they physically were entering that world. And we got to see how, when something appeared on the page before them, skeletal adjustments were made as they straightened their spine, as they took an inhalation, as they dropped their head, as they made these physical adjustments that were sometimes completely unconscious. And we went on that trip with them. Others chose to settle in. Some chose to sit on the floor, particularly as the arc became a roller coaster and some of these darker moments presented themselves. A couple of them just went to the floor and needed that stabilizing force.
Interesting.
Almost. Yeah.
Wow.
Whereas others moved into a chair and stayed there for a long time. And it felt as if they were needing that sense of security to just be there and get through the script.
May I ask you a question?
Of course.
Was there
knowing that I have no answers?
You've been doing well so far. Did you ever get the feeling that somebody was not in command of the stage at the time? In other words, when they come out and they're handed this, they literally have to take control of the environment and the stage and the audience if they can. Did you ever get the feeling that they lost that control, that somebody, and again, you don't have to name specifics, were you ever afraid that somebody was in danger of kind of losing the command of the set of what was taking place?
Yes.
Thank you for being honest.
Primarily, I would say because of the advantage of seeing it multiple times. It's not as if I memorized the script, but I certainly knew the sequence of the beats. And when a segment was eliminated, it was clear that it was not by choice, it was by happen chance. So, but I don't believe that the actor was aware of it, so that it wasn't necessarily an overt response that transferred to the audience, or vice versa. I imagine that Lacey and Waylon were the only other people who, would have been aware of that when there was something that went off script. And in terms of your question, I would say that most of the actors went there. It was a great question, and most of them went there right at the beginning. So as soon as they got the envelope, while they're opening it up, most of them made some very casual acknowledgement to the audience, going, "Okay, here we go." Let's see where this is going to take us. Which was a nice way to break the ice, to break the fourth wall, and pretty much invite the audience to walk the plank with them. And that led to that camaraderie that we got at the beginning, that I think contributed to laughter and set us up for a thematic style and tone that might not have been intended, and certainly was going to change. And therein was the big aha. Is it, we're going there? Okay, let me catch my breath.
When you were done with the fourth performance, what was your feeling of, were you proud of what the four performers had done? Were you wanting more? Were you wishing things had maybe transpired a little differently? How were you feeling after having seen all four of them?
I think this says probably more about me than anything else, and it's not necessarily a good comment, but it's one I have to own. I thought, oh man, I'd like to get my hands on that script. I'd love to have a rehearsal or two, because having seen it 4 times, I thought, this is the moment. This is the highlight. This is where it begins to, this is, Shakespeare's fourth acts are usually pretty boring, in my opinion.
Wait till you get to the fifth on some of
sometimes that too. So it's a matter of trying to find that flow, find that rhythm, find those places where it can pick up the pace and grab you, and where it can stop you and allow it to hurt. I think that with a couple of rehearsals, most of those actors could have brought audience members to tears. I think there were audience members who cried. There was one performance where I cried. And knowing
that's interesting. Huh.
And it was not the first one. So I knew the story. I knew what the script was. And the actor actually hurt my heart. So the range, like I said, the range was huge.
Yeah.
And honestly, appropriately so. Each actor was given complete carte blanche to take it wherever they wished and wherever they found themselves. That was part of the experiment. And I was really fortunate to be able to see all of that. It was a little bit like the audition process.
Mm-hmm.
You said, I remember one time I had a production that had 4 days of auditions, and by the last 15 minutes of the fourth day, I still did not have my 2 lead actors.
Oh my goodness.
And I was in such a panic. I turned to my stage manager and I said, "We can find another stage manager. Can I cast you? What am I going to do?" Etc. And that last 15 minutes, those 2 actors walked in.
Oh.
And it's every casting director's dream. Actors get so excited, so nervous, etc. Oh, they don't like me, etc. What they don't understand is every casting director wants every actor to succeed. Yeah. We're all sitting there going, "Please be the actor I want, I'm looking for, I'm needing." And I guess there was some of that for me in terms of being able to see each of these individuals as their own independent talents and seeing what each of them were going to bring. And if I had been directing, I would have had a point of view that I was trying to match, which means that I can make the wrong choices. Every director has this in mind, and then somewhere in the rehearsal process, you go, "Okay, let me throw that away, and let's see what else we can find," etc. So the whole thing is a process, and what White Rabbit, Red Rabbit does is it gets rid of all the practiced process and allows you to just go with the first time wading into the deep end and see what happens. Very, very interesting. Because it's not improv. It's not whose line is it anyway. It's a totally different beast.
So do you think, in your opinion, that this is a good format or not a good format? I mean, because, excuse me, obviously sure. It's almost impossible to stumble upon the right context of every sentence, the right inflection, because you don't know it ahead of time.
Right.
And so you're kind of getting I don't even know how to put it, an abbreviated, an assumed kind of performance, since they don't know what they're getting into. The format can kind of be clunky, can it not?
Yes, absolutely. And I don't think that it's for everyone, either for everyone as an actor or everyone as an audience member. It is a valuable process, a valuable experience. I would say that each of those actors acknowledged at the end that they had been given a gift, but they hadn't necessarily had a chance to open it up yet. So they didn't necessarily even know what the gift was. In hindsight, in retrospect, they could see what they had experienced. I don't think that it's something that every audience would embrace again and again and again. I believe that there were audience members that I saw that would not have gone back 4 times the way I did, which is not a good thing or a bad thing. It's an individual thing.
Mhm.
It's a totally different thing. Some people prefer film to stage. I mean, we all have and some people prefer comedy to tragedy, etc. So in terms of saying, everybody right now in the last 2 years of the theaters being closed, everybody's saying, is this going to change theater? Are we going to reinvent what theater should be? And I heard some of those comments, well, this is just what the future of theater is going to be. We just hand people a script and see what happens. I don't personally think that's what I would support. Mm-hmm. And again, I'm going to go to the playwright who said, this is an it's an experiment. And theater should always be open to experimentation, I think. Yeah. It has been from the Greeks, where our Furies in the 21st century are very different from Sophocles' Furies, etc. So theater is always in the present tense, sociologically, culturally, politically, in terms of gender, in terms of literature and syntax, and it's constantly evolving. It's ever since the Civil War, when we began to have photography, people started calling for the demise of theater. Oh, well, you can take a picture and you've got that right there, so we no longer need theater people. And then we went through it again with radio and with TV and the VCR, and theater's still here. There's something about theater. As soon as Broadway opened up, audiences were clamoring to get back in there. And they sold out, with people standing there with their masks and their vaccination cards and saying, let me get in those seats. So theater speaks to us on a very human and humane level. And, it's similar to the English class lessons that we all learned in high school of man against man and man against nature and man against beast. And theater is always about conflict, and it's about individual conflict, about social conflict, interpersonal conflicts. And this is just another way of exploring that. And what was most exciting for me is watching the actor make those discoveries in the moment.
That's why I say I don't think the audience, normal non-performers, understand what's taking place there.
It's okay. You can call me abnormal.
I mean, every second that actor is assimilating words and atmosphere and emotions and trying to put that back out in some kind of a format that's tangible, that's accessible. Yeah. And I don't know if the audience understands all that's going on, most audience members, in those few seconds in this particular kind of a format.
That's right.
I wanted to ask you, do you think that there are people who should not try this?
Yes. That was maybe that was a little quick.
No, it's okay. But why would you say that? What's happening that makes you say that? Is the scope of the piece? Is it what's required mechanically? What's going on there?
I'm going to go back to the National Theater Institute and their phrase of risk, fail, risk again. Just those 4 words are incredibly challenging and demanding for people who are not ready to open up their own shell and make themselves vulnerable, which is what we love. We love to see an actor's vulnerability. I mean, this goes back to Denise Diderot in the late 1800s when he wrote the essay, The Actor, and he preceded Stanislavski by saying, I don't care what you're experiencing on the stage, make me experience it in the audience. That's how acting is powerful. And I'm going to be speaking about young actors because I teach at the college right now. So, and they come out of high school having done musicals and finding the center light on the center stage, etc. And most of their audience members, say, "Oh my gosh, you were so wonderful." My daughter's high school, people came in with flowers to throw like they do in the ballet and the opera. And I told my daughter, I will never do that. I will give you flowers before a show as a way to say, break a leg, hope things go well. Or I will give you flowers at the end of a run to say, congratulations, well done. But I will not come prepared to give you accolades that you may or may not have yet earned.
Oh, you're good. You're good.
That's only because you weren't brought up by me. You didn't have to endure me as a parent. But I think that it's part of what allowed her to survive as a New York actor for the last 20 plus years, because it's tough. It's a tough business.
Yeah.
And doing this work of these performances, it really takes a certain amount of passion for the art, passion for the text, for the process of establishing a relationship, not just with the text and the character, but with the text, the character, and the audience. It's a three-way indicator of the now, in the moment. And so it's not for everyone. Stage fright is a real thing. And unfortunately, we exacerbate it by acknowledging that it's real. Skiers at the top of the ski lift, that are going down that slope and jumping at the Olympic medal, etc., they're not standing up there going, "Oh, I'm going to die. Oh, I'm going to die." They're saying, "I'm practiced. I'm ready." The basketball player at the free throw line isn't standing there going, "Everybody's watching me and I'm going to make a fool of myself."
Right.
They're saying, "I'm rehearsed. I'm ready. I can handle this. I know what to expect. I have my actor's tools in all of my pockets, ready to draw out as needed." One of my very favorite stories I'm going off track here because it's such a great story. We were doing a production of Tartuffe while I was in college, and fully costumed in period with the wigs. The two gentlemen who were on stage at the time came together, and the first guy bowed, but he was standing too close, and his wig got caught on the button of the coat of the other person. And then he stood up, and the wig just came off and was dangling there on the button. Now, that would have been okay, except the guy that lost his wig broke character, broke up, started laughing so hard that he walked off stage and left the other actor there with the wig dangling on his. Now, the actor, fortunately, the actor with the wig dangling from his button went into an improv speech that was even in verse. And it was absolutely delightful and brought down the house. The other actor couldn't do that. And so it's a challenge to be able to make those kinds of choices in the moment. And this script threw that at every single actor. And it's hard work.
Yeah, thank you for that. That's a wonderful insight. I could go off on so many tangents, but time.
Me too. That's what happens when you talk to somebody old. don't get us both started.
We just need someone to talk to us, right? We
just need to talk to each other. Let everybody else go. We'll go on.
Having seen it 4 times, what do you think of the script now? Should he maybe tweak it for now? I mean, is there, I don't know. I didn't know where to go with that, but what was your opinion after 4 of them?
Again, Ray, I'm really appreciative of the insight of your questions. This has been a pleasure, not knowing where we're going and not knowing where I was going. And you ask really intelligent questions, and they're questions that I have thought about, not in the context of this conversation on YouTube, but on those drives back and forth each time. And one of the things that I decided for myself is, yes, I would like to see the playwright make some changes in this script. I think that I personally think he probably had a thematic agenda that was not necessarily perceived by each audience or each actor, and that his message, which is basically a metaphor, I mean, the text has multiple layers. And I think with more editing, each of those layers could have been much more nuanced or fleshed out more, sublimated or expanded, as the case might be. And because there are certain points that I thought some performances glossed over, and that made me sad, because I thought that they were points that are extremely relevant to our current global circumstances, politically. I mean, it's not a political script, but look where the playwright is. Look look at the metaphor of how he is presenting it. Even the title is metaphorically referencing some pretty ugly aspects of our contemporary society. And without giving it away, I hope I didn't. But I think with a little bit of editing, those roller coaster arcs and falls could have had a little stronger punch for most actors and most audiences, because it took me the first 2 times to actually start to identify some of that.
That's interesting.
You know, metaphors are complex.
Yeah.
And subtextual metaphors are difficult for actors to play. I mean, you're playing sarcasm while you're playing congratulatory party games, and finding that tension between those diverse intentions is what makes a Marlon Brando or a Robert De Niro or a Jake Gyllenhaal, who's becoming this amazing actor who can play such a range of subtext underneath this charming exterior.
Makes me sad that maybe more people didn't see it multiple times, because it means that they didn't get cheated, but it means that they didn't get maybe the full richness of what probably they could have absorbed, from.
Yes, I agree with that. But I don't necessarily think that it's what everybody would have wanted to do.
Mhm.
It's a complex script, and not every audience wants to work that hard.
Good point. Good stuff. Yeah.
So, we still have this idea that theater is just about entertainment. And so entertain me. I don't care that much about entertainment.
That's why I like black box theater, because
Yes.
it's very, you're on the edge all the time,
Yeah.
and you're actually engaged. You're not a voyeur. You're more of a participant on some level.
Right. Yeah. When they come right up to you, and it's like,
Yeah.
wait a minute. Let me put my fourth wall up here just a little bit. So.
Well, thank you so much for this. Is there anything that you would like to add that I may have glossed over?
As I've said numerous times, it's been a joy. You have asked great questions. I was very reluctant to say yes immediately. And you made it very easy. I thank you.
Thank you.
I really appreciated the opportunity to think about it out loud.
Oh, good.
Because I didn't always have somebody that I could talk with about it who had seen it. And but the only other thing I would really like to add is how much I applaud Lacey and Waylon for being so persistent, for first of all seeing that this could work in Concord, New Hampshire, for finding a venue that would embrace this, for doing such great public relations and publicity to get the audiences there, to finding the actors. And then, of course, COVID postponed it for a year,
right?
And they continued to bring it in.
That's
so.
tenacious.
I think they gave Concord a gift, and the audience members who chose to attend saw something very special because of their commitment to this.
And some who've seen it multiple times. So.
True. That's right. That's right. And I imagine that there will be people who, if they have a chance to see it someplace else, will see something entirely different.
Yeah. Oh, that would be remarkable, actually, when you think about it. Peggy Rae, thank you.
Ray, it's been a pleasure. I'm happy to meet you.
You're somebody I would like to have coffee with sometime. So.
I accept.